It's the weekend, and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It is Jill on Money. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank Studios here in New York. Kind of getting ready for the summer? I know I am. I'm going to take some time off. You guys won't even know it because of the magic of Mark. You will not even know when I'm on vacation. The only way you will know is that when you send an email, chances are you'll send it, you'll get the response like, hi, thanks for writing, but we won't get to it very quickly. Sorry. Jilly needs her time off. And it's been an amazing first 5 months of the year for me personally, but also for the show. It's been so terrific. We've gotten, I think that this is so far, we've gotten off to just an amazing start. Mark, you happy with where we are? We're plowing through the emails, rocking and rolling. We're going to have some good interviews for you guys also because we've been a little bit remiss. I mean, it's hard. You got to make choices, right? Got to make choices as to where we want to place our focus. We put our focus on you for the first 5 months of this year. And the reason is that you write us, you send us emails, you respond to the book, you respond to the daily updates we give on a lot of radio stations across the country. And we want to use that stuff because your question is probably pretty close to someone else's question. That's what's nice. So you are doing your brethren a good deed by asking us your question. Isn't that nice? You can feel good about it. It's like very selfless. You have a question yourself. However, you also have the ability to ask a question that someone else is probably thinking about. Now, it's not always the case, but many, many times it is. So let us know if you've got a question. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what Jeff did. He is calling from Chicago. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jill. So a few weeks ago, you had mentioned something about if you have multiple IRA accounts, doing a backdoor Roth could be problematic. And so I wanted to just get some of the complexities there.
Okay. First, tell us about yourself and what we should know about your current situation financially.
Sure. So I'm just primarily saving for retirement. I have chosen to diversify my IRAs into a bunch of different accounts. And so some of them are asset-based accounts like the fixed note kind of accounts through peer-to-peer lending. Some of them are in the markets. So I have like probably 4 or 5 accounts spread out like that.
Mm-hmm. And how old are you and what's going on in your life?
34, married, just had a first son. So.
Mm-hmm. How much money do you have right now in Roth accounts?
About 40.
Okay, great. Okay, now tell me a little bit about the other stuff and how much money, like specifically what's in traditional.
So then in traditional, it's basically 120.
Okay, and is that in one account that's just like, did it come from a rollover? What? Just give me a little bit of
it's like I said, it's spread out through many accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some that were rolled over into an IRA. There's some that I just started and contributed to. And then, so it's kind of like all over the place.
Okay. And in 401k, the funds that you have inside of a 401k, how much do you have?
Yeah. So with my current employer, I've been there for a relatively short period of time. So it's only $10,000 in a Roth.
In a Roth 401k?
Yep.
Okay. And are you maxing that out?
Yep.
Okay. And tell me about like you're married, you're starting out and you got a lot of bills. Non-retirement assets. What do you have?
Let's see. So non-retirement assets. So I have about 40, 50, somewhere in there.
Okay. And is that your emergency reserve fund, or is that essentially just extra money in addition to the emergency reserve fund?
No, I would consider that emergency reserve.
Okay. All right. So here's the thing. Converting the $120,000 that's in the traditional would require you to essentially have to pay the tax due on that money. So that's sort of one of the pieces of this, right? That you would actually just have to pay the tax due. And it doesn't sound like you have the money to pay the tax that's due on that. Is that correct? Because the 40 to 50 is really your emergency money, right?
Yeah, that's correct. But I wasn't looking to convert that the traditional to Roth. Basically, what I was asking about was every year I maximize a traditional IRA contribution and then convert it to a Roth.
So like a backdoor, right? It's a traditional, but it's a non-deductible, right?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
And I thought a couple of shows ago you'd mentioned that there's some issues of that.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I understood exactly where we are with this. Okay, so if you have other money in traditional IRAs, there's now something called this pro rata rule, and it's kind of complicated. So here's what I think is the kind of the way to think about it. You've got $120,000. It's already in a traditional IRA. It's all pre-tax money, right? And so what happens is if you then put your $5,500 into a non-deductible traditional IRA, and I presume it's just sort of a separate account. It's not commingled with that other $120,000, right? Okay. Theoretically, some portion of the money is now subject to this pro rata rule, meaning that even if it's in a separate account, you might say, oh, I'm just doing this one account. I'm going to do this. You have to look across all of your traditional IRAs. And so for that reason, if you already have a bunch of money in your traditional IRA, this backdoor Roth may not be a good thing. And so what I would suggest to you is the following. I would stop doing your non-deductible. I would just fully fund your Roth 401k, and that will be the money you use. Because essentially, when you're subject to this weird pro rata rule, you're not getting the best of what a conversion means. And so that's my fear for you. What I think you should be thinking about is that because this is complicated and because it subjects you to this weird pro rata rule on what you can and cannot convert and how much you can do, I think I would just leave it alone and fund the 401k. Try to use, you can always, you make too much money to use a Roth, right? Just as a plain Roth. So then I would just build up your non-retirement assets. And again, what I think is really important is that because of the rules, you may just want to chill out and wait and not do much. And again, having the pre-tax money is not the worst thing in the world, especially now that you have a Roth 401k option. So that's what I would do. That's what I would leave it alone. You know what we're going to do? We're going to send Ed Slott an email on your behalf and have him explain this to us, and we'll send you a quick note to follow up with you, okay?
Great.
All right, we'll get back to your questions in just a couple of minutes. We're going to go pay some bills. And during the break, why don't you go onto the website, JillOnMoney.com. There you can sign up for our free newsletter. Woo! All right, Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. Mark, maybe we should have him recut that "you're all over the place" because it does sound a little, trampy. Sounds a little trampy. She's all over the place. Oh, brother. Okay. If you do have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. Let us remind you that as you head into the summer, you can often just kind of go on autopilot, which is fine if you set up your autopilot. But if you haven't done that yet, then it might be helpful if you make your life a little bit easier. So the best thing you can do is to be sure to put all of your investments on auto rebalance and automatic bill pay and do all that fun stuff so you don't have to worry about it. The only thing you have to do during the summer is to listen to us. All right, let's go and take a call. It's Chelsea from North Carolina. Hi, Chelsea.
So I had a question about post-tax retirement contributions.
Okay.
So we just got the offer through my husband's 401k to be able to contribute additional post-tax contributions to what we were contributing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around when this is a good idea, when to use this over a taxable account, et cetera.
Gotcha. Tell me a little bit about yourselves. So we know you're married because you just mentioned a husband. How old are you?
We are both 34.
Okay. And you have kids?
No kids yet.
Okay. Plan on it, though?
Eventually. Yeah, probably the next couple of years.
Okay. Debt outstanding. Give me a little bit of a rundown.
So I have a fairly significant student debt because I'm in the medical profession, so MD student debt can be quite a bit. It used to be 180. We're down to 60,000 on that.
Wait a minute. Wait a second. Hold on a second. 180 to 60? You're amazing.
Thanks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What kind of doctor are you?
I do critical care medicine.
That's too bad because I can't really ask you a question about anything for myself right now. Okay.
No, you don't want to see me.
I know, right? It's like that's the worst. How much do you earn annually?
So right now together we earn about $300.
Okay, great. The 60 grand that remains on your loans,
Mm-hmm.
that is at what interest rate?
It's at 5.5.
Okay, not terrible, but still 2.5 times what you get on your interest that's out there.
Yeah, and I'm just finishing training, so I've been going for the public service loan forgiveness, and I'm about 8 years in. So we only have about 2 years left.
Interesting. So, in other words, at the end of those 2 years, so you're making payments now, but at the end of those 2 years, did the 180 go to 60 because some is forgiven every year, or is it whatever remains gets forgiven? I don't know the contours.
It's whatever remains gets forgiven.
So you've been a very good doobie, paying this thing off, and whatever.
Yeah, we wanted to have the option to pay it off if we wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Besides that student debt,
the only thing we have is a mortgage. What's left on it is $150.
Okay. How much is the house worth?
About $220.
Okay. You're not paying that down early, are you?
Not really.
Okay. And what's the interest rate on the mortgage?
So we have an adjustable arm. Right now it's 4.
Okay.
It's not somewhere that we thought we would stay for very long. Actually, we adjusted down the first couple of times we adjusted. So.
All right. So you're at 4 and it's adjustable. Well, what's the game plan? Just give me big picture game plan. Will you sell it or now you're going to lock down and stay in there?
I think we'll probably sell it in the next couple of years and just move into something a little bit bigger. Either that or we would rent it if we stay in the area, probably keep it as a second place.
Okay. Interesting. Very good. Okay. Now, let's talk about that household income of $300 grand. You're both using retirement plans through your employers. Besides that, what else are you doing in terms of savings?
So in those retirement accounts, we are currently at about $375 for both of us.
Okay.
And they're split between Roth. We both have Roth 401ks. Mine's a 403B and then a traditional. So they're about 50-50 in that.
Great. Perfect.
And
I like that.
The last couple of years, we have been doing the Roth conversions into Roth IRAs.
Mm-hmm.
So we each have about $20,000 in a Roth IRA.
So you've been doing the backdoor.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. You still have the cash flow to do this. Is that correct? I mean, in other words, is it tight? Are you feeling like, we're killing ourselves to put all of this money away for our retirement savings? Or is it, it's not that big a deal?
No, it's not that big of a deal. We have another $220 or so in a taxable account that's managed. And we end up with an extra couple thousand a month that just sort of ends up sitting in cash because we don't really know what to do with it.
Oh, poor you. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. That's great. That's totally great. So now, 220, 750, about 800 in retirement. So right now we're at 220 taxable, about 800 in retirement. An emergency reserve fund, about how much?
We have 50,000 in a
Okay.
like
So
a
what
high-yield savings. Yeah.
what would be if you were going to move in the next, say, couple of years? If I told you don't rent that place out, just sell it and move to something else.
And just move.
What would you have to spend on a new home to be in a place you'd really want to be in?
Maybe more like 400.
Okay. No problem. That's good. I mean, you've got the only reason I asked that is that if you were going to tell me 800, then we were going to have to, but you're not going to probably by the time you get to that point, you're really not going to have to spend too much money out of your taxable account. That's all I was trying to figure out. That if you were right,
yeah.
so you would take your equity in your home, you'd put it down, and that would be the only reason why I would say that is unless you think, I don't know, you're a doctor. You really want to deal with being a landlord? If you want to do it, it could be a great thing. It can be a moneymaker. You'd have to lock down that mortgage. And if you really thought you were going to keep it, I might even just convert it right now and make it a fixed rate. If you really, truly say to yourselves, you know what? We are totally keeping this no matter what. Maybe you have a relative who wants to live in it. I would get a fixed rate mortgage. Conversely, if you're like, nah, we're not really going to do that. That's silly. We're going to have kids. We're going to have a life. We're not going to want to be landlords. Then don't refinance. Just keep what you have. Is there any reason why you shouldn't start looking for a home now?
Not necessarily. No, not other than we don't really need the additional space.
So I guess the question is that if you know you really want to move, you want to try to essentially lock down that variable expense in the future, which is in 2 years, I don't know where mortgage rates are going to be. For all I mean, I'm going to make this up. I don't know. Maybe we're going to be at 5.5% or 6% as a mortgage, which is still fine. You know, it's not going to be like the worst thing in the world. But if you know you want to move, maybe just because you have the cash flow and you don't have kids yet and you don't have anything, you can kind of get yourself set up, be in a place you want to be, and without any pressure. So I put that out there as an idea, not a necessary idea. If that were the case, then I would not want you to make a post-tax contribution. I'm hedging you a little bit because the post-tax contribution is great, but it's still in an account where you lose the liquidity, right? So I feel like there's two big things that are on the horizon: the house upgrade, and kids. And having that post-tax money that's out there is great, that the retirement contribution, but to fund it this minute feels a tiny bit premature. And I almost would, as we already talked, you already have $800,000 in retirement funds. I almost would prefer to say, let's just beef up that taxable account. We know you're going to have a house and kids, and maybe you're going to want to fund 529 plans, and you're not going to want that money that's sitting in a retirement account. So I might hold off on that, especially because you're such good savers already, and kind of maybe even talk to a financial planner and see what this looks like, or run your own numbers. I think you are really ahead of the game when it comes to retirement, so I'm not that concerned about it. But there are these two other things that are cooking in the background that are going to come to the foreground pretty soon. Okay, we will get back to more of your fantastic questions during the break. Why don't you go subscribe to our podcast? It is called Jill on Money, and you can get it on Apple, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You are back. It's Jill on Money. It's June, ladies and gentlemen. June, I say. Big month here for the Jill on Money family. We'll have more news on that. Mark, are we going to disclose everything about the baby, the name, the weight? We should do a Jill on Money baby pool. That'd be great. I'm going to bet that I know the sex and the name. Mostly because I do. But remember, looking for any new baby advice for Mark, and nothing like that's obvious. Don't give me some obvious advice. We want something that's a little different. Send your texts to Mark's cell phone number. I'm just kidding. Send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And there's a lot going on. Mark already has the experience of a 529 plan, saving for college, because he did it for his, is it nieces and nephews? Or it's, all right, nephews and niece. But you're just going to go NewYorkSaves.org, right? Going to open up that account directly. Are you going to do an age-based account or no? What are you doing? All 100% equities? All right, so 100% equities for little baby Talercio. All right, let us move on. We have questions, and you need the answers. This is from Susan. My husband and I just turned 60. Now that we are over 59 and a half, generally speaking, should we open traditional or Roth IRAs going forward? Age is not exactly 100% important on this, but let me just continue. Also, can you please explain how the 5-year Roth IRA requirement works? I opened a Roth 10 years ago at Fidelity, and then additional accounts at Citibank, M&T in 3 years after. When does the 5-year count begin? Okay, the reason why she has multiple accounts is she must have bought she bought a CD. But here are the rules. So the deal with a Roth is that you have to hold the account for at least 5 years before you can tap the earnings that have been accumulating without a penalty. So it's only about the earnings. The contributions can always be withdrawn at any time because you already paid tax on the money. So the penalty is the tax liability and 10% on the earnings portion. So that's important. The 5-year period, I'm reading this now from the website of the IRS. It begins on January 1st of the year you made your first contribution to any Roth IRA. Once you clear that 5-year period, ladies and gentlemen, to qualify as a tax-free withdrawal and you're over 59 and a half, you're all set. Now, there are some exceptions to it, but that's kind of the big deal with the 5-year rule. Now, that said, Susan, first of all, you have to have earned income if you want to contribute to a Roth IRA. Why would you contribute to a Roth versus a traditional? Because you might think, hey, I've got my taxable income is low enough that I'm in a pretty low tax bracket and it makes sense for me to do that. That's a possibility. Or maybe you just say, hey, I've got a ton of money that is already in tax-deferred accounts, and that would be, sort of a way to defray the risk of tax rates going up in the future. In any event, what I would say overall is it's not so much about your age, whether or not you use a Roth or a traditional. It's about the circumstances in your life. Okay? All right. Now, here's Ben, who's been working for about 6 years, no progress on his savings. How can he save? How can he manage to live a better life in the future without any financial issues? That I can't tell you. The way you save is you put everything on autopilot. That's the deal. More than anything else. If you can just automate your investing and saving, you'll be better off. That's really the key to it. So if you can automatically set up a way for money from your savings, like when your paycheck hits, a certain amount goes into savings, great. A certain percent goes into a 401k, great. Automatically do it. That's the deal. Okay? Bobby writes, I'm 59 years old, single, and I have less than $200,000 saved for retirement. I know I will work until I'm 70. I'm trying to straighten this out. I bought a new townhouse in 2012. It required some work, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and there's a loan to do that work. Oh, my God, it's an 8% loan. Ugh. And it's $340 a month. It's not terrible, but I don't know, 54 months to go on that loan. So what else? How do I right my ship? I can't stomach another loan. Should I take money out of my 401k? No. No, you should not. You don't mention whether or not you bought the house. I bought a brand new villa-style townhouse in 2012. I don't see a mortgage listed in here. So here, a low-interest car loan, no credit card debt. I don't know, Bobby. I think what you ought to do is probably look into a refi and do a larger refi where, I know you're going to hate this, but, take some money out, build up your emergency reserve fund, have some money there for you, and get a better rate. Rates are probably lower. I mean, that 8% is just a big number. So maybe see if you can refinance that smaller part. Otherwise, you just got to do the old-fashioned way. Pay that sucker down as quickly as you possibly can. It's not rocket science usually. I know that you know that on some level. Megan is 32 years old. Finances are a mess. I'm a single mom, no savings, waitress, 40 grand in student loans, $1,200 in credit card medical debt. How do I get something in place to financially help my son if you were to die? He's 16. Oh, well, okay. Go to policygenius.com and go get yourself some term life insurance. Cheap term life insurance. That's what you should look at. Whack off that debt as quickly as you possibly can. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, give us a call. Give us a holler. When I say call, I mean email us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You are back. It's Jill on Money. And we'd love for you to go visit our website whenever you have a question. Go into the resource section. That tab will give you lots of fun information. And let us know if you've stumbled across resources we should put on that tab. Did we add Common Bond or money-mentor.com? Oh, he's got to list that, Mark. He's got a lot of things going on. Here's a question from John. Hi, Jill. I'm a longtime avid listener and a huge fan. You make money fun, by the way, F-U-N, which is in all caps. John lives in Minnesota, so he listens to us on the great station of WCCO Radio. John went to his CPA recently, and of course they got some bad news. Rarely do you go to the CPA and be like, fantastic news, and then you write me about it. You usually write me when there's bad news. 10 grand to the Fed, 4 grand to the state. So, financial planners said that we had $28,000 in capital gains, but we didn't sell anything off. So, advisor says it was due to the sale of 2 Pershing accounts that attributed to that $28,000. He said due to the poor stock market performance in the fourth quarter, the funds were readjusted by the fund managers and caused this. Okay. This is a tough one. When you own a mutual fund, a stock mutual fund, you can be subject to 2 levels of capital gains. So here's what happens. You own the fund, right? You buy the fund at 10, you sell it at 12. That's a $2 capital gain. And if that happened for more than a year, if the purchase was done more than a year ago, and now you sell it, $2 treated as capital gains on a long-term basis, capital gains rate applies. Now, inside the fund itself, remember, there's a manager, right? So if Mark and I are the managers of a mutual fund, we buy and sell stocks in and out of that fund. When we buy a stock and then sell it, the capital gain is distributed to whomever owns the shares at the time. So presumably, let's say that Mark and I bought Apple, and we bought it 10 years ago, and it's in our mutual fund. And at the end of last year, we're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to do a little rebalancing, get some things in, get some things out, and we sell that position. We create a capital gain for the fund. And you get a share of that capital gain. Now let's talk about this for your real life, and because this is something that has already happened. What I would point out to the financial planner is that you should not be owning actively managed funds in your non-retirement accounts because they are creating too much of a tax liability. And so, if anything, this is like the best case scenario, the best case defense or argument for buying index funds. Because index fund managers don't buy and sell, do they? They just buy whatever's in the index. The only reason they buy and sell is if a company leaves the index or is added to the index. I'd be very interested to learn what else is in your non-retirement portfolio. I also would be very interested to learn how you pay your financial planner. And so if you wouldn't mind, maybe follow up and let's see what else is in there. Ideally, what should happen is that when you own a mutual fund that has big distributions, and they usually know what the distributions are going to be in October or November, that then your advisor or planner or broker will take an action in your portfolio to try to harvest some losses to offset those gains. All right. Now, by the way, John says, I bought your book. I'm going to read it when we're on spring break in California. I hope you like the book. Hope that was good for you. Love that CCO. All right. This is from, I don't know the name of this person. Oh, Joe. Joe says, if you took a lump sum payment from your employer, what would be the best way to invest it for a monthly income with the least amount of risk? Could you be a vaguer, Joe? I'm being sarcastic. It depends. Come on now. We don't know if that lump sum from your employer is severance. So is it actually earned income? Are you saying that you took a lump sum from a retirement plan? Maybe it needs to be rolled over. What else is going on in your life? It is very hard to maximize income with low risk. So those are two competing forces. Joe, we need more information. Aren't I a pain in the neck? Just answer the question, Schlesinger. I can't. I just can't. I'm sorry. So hard sometimes. Sometimes I wish I could just give you the answer so lickety-split, but it just doesn't always work that way. All right, we some more questions about capital gains when we come back because I got another couple questions here. So there we have it. Student loans, all that stuff. More questions coming up, and most importantly, your questions. We want to hear from you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Go to the website, jillonmoney.com. There you can buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. Jill on Money will be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, a comment about the show, a suggestion, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And Sarah writes, listen to this subject line. You inspired us with many exclamation points. Now, you got my attention, Sarah. Jill, I am a longtime listener and fan. You inspired us to help our adult 28-year-old daughter and 29-year-old new son-in-law with his student loan debt. It was compounding rapidly. He initially borrowed $37,000. It had ballooned up to $73,000. So here's back to the note from Sarah. Our daughter had an academic scholarship, so she had no debt, but he accumulated his debt from grad school. Inspired by your great advice to other listeners, my husband and I propose that they pay off the loan completely using $13,000 of their savings plus $60,000, which we loan to them interest-free. We can afford to do this. They have to pay us $500 every month, and when they've paid back $15,000, we will gift back to them $12,000, which could be put towards their savings for a down payment on a home. This enables them to get into the habit of saving and paying every month. Since last May, when the loan was paid off, they have not missed a payment. If for any reason they default on the loan will be deducted from our daughter's inheritance from our estate at the time of our deaths. I love these people. Sarah, I love this. Here we go. Here's Sarah's next suggestion. Your next book should be how to help people tackle how not to make dumb decisions about debt. Most 20-somethings don't understand the consequences of borrowing, and the universities paint a glossy picture of the future without enabling the students to understand what a beast they are taking on. Now that you know how to do deep work, I loved that podcast. You could easily crank out that next book. Take care. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. I love your podcast. Sarah, thank you so much for writing. And thank you all. That's great. You are listening to the Jill on Money show. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank studios in New York. When we return, we will get back to more of your questions. Go to the website, JillOnMoney.com during the break. Check out all the good stuff that's there and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Stand by. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
All righty, it's hour number 2 of Jill on Money. And we are delighted that you are joining us back for the second hour. We are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius studios in New York. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Go to policygenius.com. All right, I am so excited because I have been trying to get this guy to come on the program for a long time. And I think it may be helpful because as we come into the summertime and people are taking breaks, you might want to really focus on some of his messaging. Our guest today is Cal Newport. He's written a bunch of books. The one that got me really interested in him is called Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. And we're going to talk about that book. We're also going to talk about his new book called Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World. So Cal Newport, he is an academic. He's super interesting. He writes so easily. His messaging is spot on with the messaging that we believe in here on this program. So this is a real treat. Here is our interview with Cal Newport. I first became familiar with you when you wrote a book called Deep Work, and it kind of blew my mind. So can you just outline a little bit of the thesis of Deep Work, and then maybe we can talk about how that may have led to your current new book, Digital Minimalism?
Well, they're definitely connected. So Deep Work, in some sense, was talking about some of the unexpected consequences of technology in the workplace. And the argument it was making is that we are undervaluing focus. So we're undervaluing what you get out of sustained concentration, and we were overvaluing convenience of, let's say, flexible communication or accessibility. And so the argument was, if you're an individual or organization that cultivates the ability to focus intensely during work, you would have this huge competitive advantage because almost no one else was doing it.
When you started writing that, what year was that about?
probably 2014 is when I started to get serious in the research for that.
So already we had the iPhone out for 7 years. We have lots of different interruptions, but the focus part of that, we've always been interrupted by different things in our lives. I mean, email or the phone way back when.
Yep.
So what is it that you prescribe in deep work that you have found has really yielded great upside for people who need to focus?
Well, even the vocabulary was a big deal for a lot of people. The shallow work, which is the emails and the meetings and the putting together the PowerPoint slides, is different than the deep work, which is the sustained concentration. And that when you make the claim that it's the deep work that actually moves the needle, that's what actually is going to push you ahead in your career or going to raise the profit of the company, while the shallow work is just what keeps the lights on. It's the logistical work that keeps things going. And noting that those are two different things. So it's not just enough to say, I'm busy, or that I work really hard, I was in the office all day, that you actually have to start thinking what type of work I'm doing. Just adding those terms to the efforts that people did in the office, I think really helped people rethink, okay, what am I actually doing here? Frenzy is not enough. The actual type of activity matters, and focus is producing the value.
And what's interesting, I interviewed Daniel Pink, who wrote a book called When, and he talks about doing deep work at specific periods in the day, which may be different for every individual. Did you find that also?
It is different, but what they share in common is a commitment to having actual systems for how they schedule it and rituals surrounding the actual deep work, because it's actually really difficult. It's a big ask of the human brain to say, I want to give sustained attention, especially to something that's abstract or symbolic. Like this is a big ask. It's not something that you're going to feel like you're in the mood to do. It's not something that you easily slip into. So serious deep workers have these scheduling philosophies. This is when I do my deep work. Could be different between what you do or I do,
right?
But it's clear that they have these rituals that surround it. Okay, how do I coerce my brain into actually entering this mode of sustained concentration on something abstract? So that is really common.
And what do you do to drown out everything else? So you don't put your email on, you turn off your phone. What else?
Yeah, well, it's key in the definition of deep work that any distraction means it's no longer deep work. So even the quick glances, only every 15 minutes, still doesn't count. If you're looking at an inbox at all, if you're glancing at a phone at all, it doesn't count. So that's the hard and fast rule we have for deep work, is that it has to have zero distractions. Your attention needs to be on the one thing and only that one thing, getting your sustained concentration. Because we have a lot of research that shows what kills you in concentration is not multitasking, it's the context switching. So even if you just context switch for a minute to look at an inbox, you're going to pay a cognitive price for a long time after that. And so we got the message maybe around 2010 or so that pure multitasking doesn't work. So if I'm on the phone and answering email while trying to write something difficult, I'm not doing any of them well. The subtle issue, though, is people now think they're single tasking because they only have, let's say, Microsoft Word open. For the most part, they're only working on that one hard thing, but they're doing these quick checks every 10 or 15 minutes.
Right. So if I check my phone while I'm writing my manuscript, I am really losing ground in that endeavor of deep work.
After you put the phone away, you continue to lose ground. And
How long?
Well, at least 10 to 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I would say most knowledge workers go less than 10 to 15 minutes in between quick checks. And so they think they're single tasking because, literally speaking, they're not doing these things at the same time, except for in those quick moments that they're checking. But the attention residue cost, which is the term that comes out of the psychology literature, the attention residue, when you come back to the primary task, lasts for a while and reduces your cognitive output. And so that's why deep workers are so adamant that there can't be a single glance. And if you glance, the whole session no longer counts as deep work.
What?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
Not even like that first half hour where you blew it?
No, if you've glanced in the last half hour, it doesn't count.
Okay, so let's use me as an example. Why not? I wake up very early, so I have to check my email because I'm in news, right? Yeah. So I have to make sure nobody needs me to come on set or do anything. I do that very quickly. And then, should I put an auto reply on my email at that point and basically say, I will not be checking email for the next 2 hours?
Or develop a ritual that the people who need to reach you know. I mean, something that's very common is you have some sort of emergency procedure. So, okay, here's my phone number, the people you work with know. If there's something breaking, you could call this phone or send a text message.
Right.
Otherwise, this is my writing time, and then I'll be back on it at whatever, right? Expectations are set. And people adjust pretty clearly. It turns out in the workplace that predictability is more important than accessibility, and we often get that wrong. What people need to know is I know how and when I can reach you and how that system works is more important than actually having 24 access to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if there's some emergency, someone has your number, they'll call you.
Yeah.
Right?
You put a little bit of friction in, and you're surprised by how rarely that actually happens.
There are some people who have said to me, but my boss really expects me to check in during vacation. How do I get out of that trap?
Right. But I mean, a lot of that is often the predictability versus accessibility dynamic. If it's unclear when I can reach you and when I can't, then I just need to be able to reach you, right? Because I can't deal with this idea that I might need you and I have no idea how to get in touch with you. And so let's just default to answer my emails.
Yeah.
But if it's clear, okay, here's how it works. I am definitely reachable. There's certain periods when I'm not, when I'm doing this type of work. When I'm on vacation, this is my point of contact. These are the rules of engagement for getting back in touch with me. That type of clarity almost always satisfies.
Do you think that the autoresponder actually works or doesn't work?
I think it could be useful because it does give information about accessibility. I think in general, what I call communication rules are useful, which is having clarity.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with Cal Newport in just a minute. Well, what are you doing during the break? Oh, I know what you can do. Go to JillOnMoney.com. Do it. And you can check out all the great content we create. You can read. You can listen, you can watch, you can do it all. Just go to JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We're the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life, but we're also the program that tries to help you live a better life, incorporating everything that's going on. And, you know, what we often will do here is we'll talk about right-sizing your financial life and having it not take you over. There's so many distractions out in the universe, and that's why I'm very happy that our guest, Cal Newport, is with us. Remember, you have a certain amount of autonomy when it comes to managing the things in your life that distract you, right? And I know you don't feel like that all the time. You may feel like, oh, I always have to check my work email. Okay, maybe you have to check it sometimes. You don't maybe have to do it as much as you're doing it. But what about the idea that we are now a culture that is checking in on digital platforms all the time? I know I find myself doing this too. How can you really focus on what is necessary to make your life happy? How are you going to really focus on connecting with somebody, not just liking a Facebook post, not just a retweet, but having actual human interaction that fulfills you, it feeds you? Well, that is why we are so happy that Cal Newport, our guest, is joining us today. His new book is called Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World. And if you feel overwhelmed by all of that digital access, Cal has a really great idea. So here's more of our interview with Cal Newport. Talk about what led you to digital minimalism, choosing a focused life. So there's your favorite word, focus,
Yep.
in a noisy world.
The readers of Deep Work were actually a big part of the initial push into this topic. So I was out there on the road. I was talking about it. This is a book about the workplace. Deep Work was about the workplace. And readers would come up to me and say, okay, maybe I buy this premise about what's going on in the workplace, but the real issue, I mean, the one that's literally keeping me up at night, is the impact of new technologies in my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something
Interesting.
really interesting going on there, but also really different than what's happening in the workplace. In the workplace, we're talking about expectations with bosses. We're talking about email. We're talking about Slack. What was happening in people's personal lives was actually much different. And I had been noticing, because I'd written about these topics for a while, but I'd been noticing around that time, 2016, early 2017, that there'd been a shift in the way that people seemed to be talking about this. This shift from the self-deprecation, like, oh, I'm on my phone all the time, isn't it crazy, into actual unease, where people were starting to get fed up. People were actually looking for changes. This is not healthy. This is not sustainable, what's happening in my personal life. This message was so strong. I was receiving it so strongly, I felt like I had no option but to actually leave the world of business and dive into this particular topic. What's happening in our personal lives with technology?
And you were able to go out to your fan base and say, who wants to help me with this project, basically?
Yeah.
Talk about that experiment and what it yielded.
Well, so one of the things that became clear when I was working on the book is that if you're going to transition your digital personal life to something more sustainable, small tips, small changes, this wasn't going to get it done. Like something more wholesale had to happen. I worked on a process, a 30-day process that I thought could affect this rapid transformation, but I wanted to kick the tires on it. So I put out a note to my readers just on my email list saying, hey, is anyone willing to come along with me and do a 30-day experiment? You're going to have to step away from all the technology of your personal life. It's not going to be easy. And then send me reports about it. I thought that maybe 20 or so people would agree because it's a big ask. And then over 1,600 people ended up signing up.
That is that is a cry for help right there, isn't it? Like, not only do I want to do this, but I really need you to help me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you said it around your personal life, because you make a distinction that part of this, look, there you have the deep work and some of the rules and the consistency around work life, which I get. Everybody has different expectations. If you work at some big law firm, and the client wants you, tough luck. Don't be a lawyer in this day and age if you don't want to be notified at late in the day, right?
Yeah.
But for your personal life, that's where you were having these feelings that came out that were, I think that people understood, like, I'm sort of, not like, maybe I'm not addicted, maybe I am addicted, but I have a tendency, an urge, something is drawing me back to this device, and I can't escape it. Can you just talk a little bit about the two issues, especially around social media, that draw you in?
Yeah, well, in some sense, the companies went too far, and that's part of what was creating this trend where people were going from self-deprecation to unease, is they got so good at getting you to look back at the phone, because, again, that's directly the activity that generates revenue for the company. You going back to the phone, using it, giving data, and allowing your data to be used to target advertisements at you, that's the business model. They got real serious about this business model around the time they started to think, how are we going to make this IPO a success? So Facebook in particular innovated a lot of what's bringing us to the phone. When the IPO was coming up, they were thinking, we have to get the revenue up. To get revenue up, we have to get user engagement minutes up. To get user engagement minutes up, we have to completely re-engineer the experience of social media. And we have to take it away from what is used to be, which is primarily you have a profile, other people maintain a profile, you check in on your friends' profiles, they sometimes check in on yours, and they re-engineered it to this experience where you're getting this steady stream of rewards coming at you through the app, like likes. We think like is fundamental to social media. It's not. That's a feature that's much more serving the interest of the companies than it is the users. Photo auto tagging, the quick comments that you can leave, the hearts on Instagram. This changed the experience of social media to one where you have constant rewards, social approval indicators about you coming in, which really led to this new relationship people had with their phones, which is this constant companion. I'm always clicking, which is different than it was before.
I love the you said that the tech companies encourage behavioral addiction, intermittent positive reinforcement. That's the hearts, that's the likes, which you think should just be banned. Like everyone should stop doing that immediately.
It's not a feature that was added because it made the user experience better. Those were features that were added because it quadrupled user engagement minutes.
That's incredible. And the drive for social approval, because we are social animals, right? And we do want that. Where is it that you see in the iteration of where we are today in social media where you start to see the approval part of that?
Well, so the big shift was instead of the static experience where maybe I read what's going on in your life or maybe someone reads about what's going on in my life, they had to figure out how we give indications that people are paying attention to you. And so if I see there's likes, that literally means someone liked something I was doing. So if I tell you, like, here's an envelope, and in this envelope is something that someone was thinking about you, human nature makes it almost impossible not to open that envelope. Whereas if I say, hey, in this envelope there's something interesting or funny, you're like, oh, that's nice, maybe I'll get to that. But if I tell you, no, someone said something about you, I wrote it down, it's in that envelope, you're going to have to open it. And so the social media platforms figured out pretty quickly, we have to find these indicators of social approval. We have to make the stream of social approval indicators as rich as possible, because that's human psychology 101. It might be nice to see what my friend is up to, but I have to see what people are thinking about me.
Oh, my God. That is what got me off of social media right there, by the way.
The counts?
No, what people are like or
are they
dislike
liking,
or
disliking?
dislike. Because, so in my case, on Twitter or not so much on Facebook, but more like on Twitter, which is a cesspool.
Yeah.
I had to be on for work, like you're in journalism, which I think is baloney. I think this is all baloney to the nth degree. Like I know tons of journalists who are like, oh, no, you have to be on Twitter. Like, yeah, if you're a producer and you're looking for people to be in stories, yes. But for someone like me, I don't have to be there. And I was really not into the nastiness.
Yeah.
I was really not into. I really didn't like the anti-Semitism. Oddly enough,
That's
strange.
interesting.
Yeah,
that
it's
wasn't
crazy.
fun.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I don't have a thick enough skin, I guess. But I really said I need to stop this. So Mark, the executive producer extraordinaire, kind of runs my social accounts, and he'll tell me if something I need to respond to, or he'll forward something to me that is important.
Yes.
And he'll say to me, this person's looking for you. They want a speaking engagement. Or I think your uncle's looking for you on Facebook.
Yeah.
But I am so much happier with Mark being my filter because it just hurt my feelings so much.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is the way I think news organizations should run. Is there should be people who engage or monitor what's going on social media on behalf of the journalists, as opposed to this model that the journalists themselves should be constantly engaged in the social media. That also distracts you and it fragments your attention. It makes it very difficult to write the scripts or think through the story. And so I'm with you.
Okay, we'll get back with our interview with Cal Newport in just a second. If you've got a financial question, do send us an email. It's askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. And of course, if you want, when you're on the website at jillonmoney.com, you can just click on the Contact Us button. Right there. Right there. Easy peasy. Easy to do. Okay, now, we're going to get back to our interview with Cal Newport. And Cal Newport, author, academic, smart dude. I love his idea of how he uses in his book these real-life examples of Amish farmers to Silicon Valley parents who have figured out some of the ways to minimize our digital addictions. And in fact, Newport has identified the common practices among all the people who seem to do this really well. The people who are basically using technology to support their goals and values rather than letting technology use them. So here is the last bit of our interview with Cal Newport. So now I want to talk about the principles of digital minimalism, starting with one of my favorite things, which is you quantify it and you say clutter is costly.
Yeah.
And explain that.
Right. Well, I mean, if we take a step back, what is minimalism asking you to do? What it's asking you to do essentially is wipe the slate clean of all of this haphazard junk that you've added into your personal digital life for arbitrary reasons. Wipe it clean, get rid of it all, and then carefully rebuild it from scratch. Except for when you rebuild it from scratch, you just put in the big ROI, the big wins, big ROI options, right? A selective, intentional use of technology that now you're choosing very specifically. This is going to help something I really value. This is going to help something I really value. This doesn't, so I'm going to ignore it, right? That's classic minimalism. Now, the question is, why does that work? Because it does mean that you have to miss out on things that could bring you some small value or convenience.
Right.
Like focusing on just the big wins, you're ignoring the small wins. So why do you end up net better off? Well, one of the reasons is this first principle is that the clutter itself has a big negative cost. And so we're used to this in the physical clutter space, that if I'm a hoarder, that so my house is overflowing with all this junk. It's true that if you point to any one thing in my house, I could give you some reason why I might need that newspaper from 1985. Like,
right.
Whatever, that was a good year. I might want to remember it. But obviously, the overall negative cost of having my house be so overcluttered far outweighs even the sum of all those small pieces of value. Well, it's the same thing in your digital life. You have all these things on your phone. They're all clamoring for your attention. You have some explanation for each. Like, here's the reason why I downloaded that, or here's what I could do with this. But the overall negative cost of having your attention constantly being pulled at, constantly being manipulated, can far outweigh the sum of all those little benefits they bring you.
So the first thing I did after I read the book was I deleted all social media from my phone. And then I'm like, okay, not missing it at all. Okay. So once you realize that you have that clutter is costly, you say that optimization is important. That is principle number 2 of digital minimalism. Can you explain that?
Right. So what minimalists do is after they make these intentional selections, this is the tech I'm going to use in my personal life. Here's the big win I want to get out of it. They don't stop at the binary question of what. They also ask how and when. And this is where they really start to get the big win. So they want to say, well, how am I going to use this technology and when am I going to use this technology? And so this is where you get these setups like I was just saying where, well, it's not on their phone. Maybe it's just on their desktop. And maybe they very severely curate their experience and they have schedules around it. And so like an example I give in the book is that I worked with a lot of visual artists who told me, okay, Instagram passes this test of this is important for something I really value, because if you're a visual artist, you need to have a constant stream of creative input. That's the grist, right, into the mill of creative output. And Instagram is a great place for that because a lot of artists post images of their work. And so the minimalists who go through this process, who are artists, to say, okay, so I do need Instagram, when they do the how and the when question, they completely re-engineer their experience with Instagram. And so, for example, they'll often curate who they follow down to maybe, let's say, 10 artists. They'll take it off the phone. They'll put it on the desktop. They'll have a schedule, which is like, this is what I do Sunday morning. I spend 20 minutes to see what's been posted by these artists over the past week. They're getting 99% of the deep value out of the service, and now they're avoiding 99% of the cost. So that's the optimization piece of being a minimalist, and it really does help push you in the big win category.
What drew you to the Amish? I found that to be rather curious and really illuminating.
Well, the Amish highlight the third, I would say, principle about digital minimalism, why it works, which is this notion that intentionality itself can be so valuable that it swaps out the inconveniences of being selective. And so the Amish take this idea and they push it to a far extreme. So they have this very clear intention. We misunderstand the Amish often. We think fallaciously that they froze their technology at some point in the 18th century, right? And said, okay, it's never going to get any better. We're not going to do anything new. It's 1795.
I was just going to say, it's like 1801, done.
Yeah, like
right.
Whatever. They really like that year.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine we're going to get any better,
right.
Which is not at all the case. I mean, I learned a lot about the Amish through Kevin Kelly, who spent a lot of time with the Lancaster Amish when he was younger, and he writes about how you show up at an Amish village, and that idea gets blown out of the water right away. He talks about showing up and an Amish boy goes by on rollerblades, and there's solar panels and generators and disposable diapers on the kids. So what's really going on with the Amish? It's not anti-technology. They have this clear intention, which is for them, community, strength of community. Like that's the whole ballgame. And so every new technology that comes along, they evaluate it. Is it going to make our community stronger or is it going to make it weaker? And they'll test it. They'll say, okay, here's a smartphone. We'll use it. Cell phones, let's try it. Let's have someone try it out. Cars, let's buy a car. Let's see what happens. I mean, they watch what happens. And if it strengthens the community, they say, great. If it weakens it, they say, no go. Right? And so this is why you could have a diesel generator or disposable diapers. It doesn't weaken the community. But if you have electricity connected to the grid, well, now we're kind of too connected to the outside world. Or a car is really a problem because when they tried cars in the early 20th century, people left. They go do other things.
Yeah.
They weren't around visiting with neighbors. They said, okay, no cars. Now, I'm not advocating that we should follow the same value system of the Amish, but the fact that the old Amish community still exists, even though they're surrounded by Western East Coast civilizations, not like they don't know what's going on, emphasizes this broader point, which is there could be so much value in being intentional that it swaps out the inconveniences, because they have inconveniences pushed to an extreme, and yet this order still survives in large part because there's such value out of being intentional. So on a much smaller scale, that's why digital minimalists could end up better off is, it's inconvenient sometimes not to have all these apps, but the value you get out of being so intentional about your technology can be so satisfying that it swaps out all of those minor inconveniences.
Thanks so much to Cal Newport. We'll have links to his website, which has all of his books, the ones that I love, Digital Minimalism and Deep Work, all there for you. Okay, when we return, back to your questions. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. Shout out to good customer service, by the way. I had the craziest thing. I didn't even tell you this, Mark, because, my nutty dogs, every time I'm watching television and a horse clomps by, they start barking incessantly. So you can't watch any old period piece English dramas, which I love, but you also can't watch Game of Thrones because there are horses in every scene. So I was like, well, I don't know. I got to buy some headphones. I go over to the Best Buy, which I never do. I walk in there. There's like a real human being who helps you out. And check this out. Guy emails me after I buy the thing. He says, how did it work? I said, I'm having a problem. He goes, call me. I call him. He goes, walk me through what's happening right now. Walks me through, get the whole thing settled. So happy. Isn't that good? They also price match. Just like, hey, it's $2 cheaper on Amazon. I didn't actually do that, but I saw someone else grab the extra $2. Okay. Anyway, I have nothing to do with Best Buy except to say I like good customer service. So that's kind of a neat thing. Joe writes in about capital gains tax. Okay, here's the deal. Joe is single. He bought the stock not in a retirement account 10 years ago. Now he's got significant gains. So when you look at long-term capital gains rates, there's sort of four levels. There's a 0%, there's 15%, there's 20%, and then I put the fourth on top, which is there is an extra 3.8% that gets put on top of some of these rates if your adjusted gross income is over a certain amount, meaning that if you make more than $250,000 as a joint filer, $200,000 as a single filer, you get an extra 3.8% on top of that. Okay, let us go back to Joe. Joe, however, has taxable income of $35,000, which would put him into the 0% long-term capital gains rate. All right? Now he says, what if I sell the stock, the 50 grand of stock? Will that 50 grand pop me into the 15% capital gains bracket? Yes, it will. So what are the alternatives? You could say, oh, well, I'm just going to sell $4,000 worth of stock every year, so I pay 0% capital gains on that. That's one choice. Or you could say, heck, who cares? I'll pay 15% capital gains because that's still a very cheap rate. And so what's your risk? Your risk is, I paid 15% and I could have paid 0. True. What if the stock price goes down? In other words, would you rather pay 15 cents on the dollar, or would you rather potentially lose out on 100 cents on the dollar? In old-time financial planning and investment management, we used to call that don't let the tax tail wag the investment dog. So got to be careful about that, okay? Really. This may not be worth it to you. All right. Here is Tom, who is single, and he's 63, and he is following up on a question that he asked, which is he's got about $6.4 million accumulated. Half is retirement, half is in a trust. Pretty much 50-50 investor. He's got a small Roth 401k. I'm sorry, a small Roth IRA, $125,000. He says, my income is high over a 5-year stretch due to a business buyout. Okay, what I want to know is if I cashed out the Roth, full withdrawal while in these high brackets and reinvesting in additional tax-free bonds, couldn't I take advantage of the tax-free benefit while my income tax rates are high and will drop quickly over the next 2 to 3 years? Maybe the difference in my tax brackets might be a better yield than market returns with balanced account as well, with market being at higher levels. I don't get this. I still don't get this question. It's a follow-up question. I don't understand. The Roth's money has already been taxed. It doesn't matter whether you say, oh, I'm going to take it out now. Who cares if you took it out now? Whether you're at a high bracket or a low bracket, wouldn't you just want to leave that money to grow? It sounds to me like you've got plenty of money. So I guess I don't understand why you want to take it out and put it into municipal bonds. Maybe keep it in the Roth and put it into intermediate term corporate bonds. I don't get this. I must be dopey because I'm not exactly sure why one would do this. So what if your tax rate drops? You don't need to pull the Roth money at all. I would, in fact, refrain from taking any of the Roth money. I must be missing something. Truly. I know. This could be like the third follow-up. Everyone have fun chewing through all of this stuff. Do you need some help? Someone asked me to be a judge of new financial technology websites. I got to go do that. When we have some of the results, I'm going to share it with you. But try to automate all this stuff as much as you can and use technology. It is your friend. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. When we return, more of your questions. Hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com. You can listen to past shows, or if you miss any part of this one, and you can also subscribe to our sister podcast. You can subscribe to it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. Before we call it quits for the day, let's answer another electronic mail message. You can always send us a note. All you have to do is send it to askjill@jillonmoney.com or simply bookmark jillonmoney.com, our website. Hang out there. Every time you have a question, there's the bookmark, contact us button, top right. Okay? That's what Barry did. He says, I love listening to you and Dave Lee every Monday morning. That is Dave Lee on WCCO Radio. All right, Barry says, with the price of everything going up, is there ever going to be a breaking point? In 10 years, are we going to be paying $20 for a loaf of bread? Wasn't the Great Depression the last correction? Thanks, Jill. By the way, I always like to correct your name with a French twist as Jill Schlesinger. You are very classy. Listen, the real proper pronunciation is the German way, which is Schlesinger. Okay, first of all, inflation is low right now. So calm down, Barry, and everyone else who's worried about inflation. In fact, you know what the Federal Reserve is worried about? Not prices going up, but prices by not going up by as much as they want. So, I think that it can be incredibly, what can I say, misleading. It can be misleading to look at the price of something without saying, well, that's just time. So if you really look at the inflation rate and you go back and you look at all the inflation calculators online, you'll see that in the last 10 years, 20 years, inflation's pretty low. Less than 2% a year. Yes, gas prices can spike every now and again. Yes, that will drive up the cost of stuff. Yes, healthcare costs are increasing, but other things are not. So the general rate of inflation has actually been fairly subdued. You heard it here from Jill Schlesinger. All right, that's it. That's the program. Thanks for listening. We are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius Studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Go check it out at policygenius.com. And if you've got a question, we're always here for you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Go ahead, go online, or go to the website, jillonmoney.com. Go and buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.